All right. So I'm here today, Brad and I, and this is Brad's first coaching session with me, although we've talked beforehand. And Brad has some very, ambitious goals. And one of the things that I liked about what you sent me in terms of your agenda was the question, how do I scale up? How do I become more efficient? And I want to hear more from you, but I thought before we would get into, some of the things I need to hear from you. I wanted to talk about the 4-hour workday. Is that okay, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen now, and the reason I'm interested in this is I'll tell you a story, Brad. When I was teaching at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University years ago, I had I had a guest lecturer come and talk. He was a tech titan. He was into the internet before there was an internet. I mean, he was really a visionary, and he had a lot of success as a tech guy, but he also had some failures, right? And like we all have. I mean, most people would like to have only successes, but I've had successes, lots of them, but I've had failures too. So one of the things, his name was John Kelly, and he had started a company called Nabu Networks, Nabu, Nabu Networks, and uh, and and he described it to me. This was in the 80s, of how it would network between computers and how you could view things. And it was very, very, very similar to what the internet became in 92, 93, 94, when Netscape, the first browser, was released, and we started to see the real implications. But John understood those implications probably 5 or maybe even 10 years before the internet became a real thing. Nabu was a failure. And John went on to have many other successes in tech. And he came to give a lecture. It was a great lecture, except there was one part of it uh, where I thought he had sort of gone off the rails a little bit. Now, I was too polite to ask him about that in front of the class because I didn't want to maybe embarrass him in front of 50 or 60 students. But he did talk about work-life balance. And when he talked about that, I went, whoa. And and the students were all going, yeah, work-life balance, how important that is, being home with the kids some of the times, like you and your wife are. My wife and I are too at this stage in COVID-19. But but I did ask him in the Q&A that followed his presentation. I said, John, you're retired now, but then he was, I think, in his 70s. Today, I don't know how old he would be, but maybe late 80s, so he'd be quite elderly now. But John, you're retired now. He said, yes, I am. And I said, so maybe work-life balance has really come into focus for you, because even as a retired person, you still continue to work, Brad. Um, and and so I asked him, so how many hours a week are you working? Oh, he said between 50 and 60. That was him in retirement.
Yeah.
Before he retired, it was probably 80 to 100 hours a week.
Hmm.
So, after he left, I said to my class, I said, this is when Tim Ferriss had written that book, The 4-Hour Work Week.
Yeah.
And I thought Tim did a disservice to people, entrepreneurs all across the world, because I think the 4-hour work week is not real. It's not possible. I'm not even sure it would be good for people to only work 4 hours a week. So I've kind of stolen Tim's idea a little bit here, and I call it the 4-hour work day. And so a number of my clients, not many of them, don't mind working 10 or 12 hours a day. I like working, so I work 10 or 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I take Sundays off. But for clients of mine who do really want a work-life balance, I say, don't aim for the 4-hour work week. I think that is mainly BS. Aim for the 4-hour work day. And they say, well, how do you do that? So I've actually met 2 entrepreneurs who managed to do it. So you're supposed to ask me now, Brad, how?
I could take a guess, but yeah, I'd like to hear.
All right. So they couldn't get to the 4-hour work week, but they got to the 4-hour work day. And how do they do that? Number one, they operated very, very, very profitable companies. So if you and I are operating a restaurant now, and we are barely hanging on by our fingernails. And today, of course, that might be very true. But even before COVID-19, if we were operating a restaurant that some weeks we could pay our bills, some weeks we can't, et cetera, you are never going to get to a 4-hour workday. You're going to be working 6, maybe even 7 days a week, all the time, just trying to hang on. So unless you're, number one, unless your business is very profitable, you cannot get to a 4-hour workday, in my opinion. Now, how does that translate into real estate? You and I are very interested in real estate investing. It means that for clients of mine, for example, in Long Beach, California, who before I started coaching with them, were buying properties with cap rates between 0.98% and 1.6%, they are never getting to a 4-hour work week. Those cap rates are way, way, way too low. So I put in place a discipline for them and for myself and for everybody else I coach, that we don't purchase anywhere, whether it's Los Angeles or Nashville or Toronto or Ottawa, we don't purchase properties that are less than a 6% cap rate. That is your minimum goal. And at 6%, most properties will cash flow. And if we're buying, Brad, if we're buying properties in small towns, I want a cap rate that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%, not 6%. 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12. I'm not kidding. Because in small towns, you generally don't get the same kind of appreciation of your assets as you do in Los Angeles or Toronto or Vancouver or even Ottawa. So you've got to kind of make up for that with higher cash flow. So number one, you have to have a profitable business. I don't care whether it's a tech business or a real estate business. If you want to get better work-life balance, it better be profitable or you will never get there. So that's number one. Number two, when you have a business that's very profitable, guess what? You can fine tune that with, you asked me about standard operating procedures, and we're going to come back to that in your agenda, but you can fine tune what you do because you actually have some extra money around. If you want to invest in a little bit better technology, maybe, for example, you've got a house that you've duplexed. Great. You had a single family home and you put a basement apartment in. Super. But now you're saying, well, Bruce, I can't charge the basement apartment for their power consumption or their gas consumption because I don't know what it is. And then they can't necessarily be efficient in their use of power or heating because they don't know either. Well, you could submeter, right? Do you know what submetering is?
Yeah.
All right, so you can submeter, but if you have no money, you can't afford to spend, $600 or $800 putting a submeter in so that you can give your basement apartment, an accurate reading of how much power he or she or they are using, or how much gas, natural gas, they're using to heat the lower level apartment. So when you have something that's profitable, you have money to fine tune your operations. You can hire better people, you can put in better systems. And you can, spend some time learning about new things so that you're providing a better experience for your tenants, but also a better product overall for you and for them. Is that making any sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So number one, you fine tune your operations, and because you have some money, it's a little easier to do. And number two, I want people to work with a business model. And I want to hear from you in a few minutes. I'm not going to talk for 2 hours. I want to hear from you as to what your business model is and how we're going to tweak that. I don't know yet, but we're going to talk about that. But why is it that I like some people, they count sheep before they go to sleep. They see the little lammies going across their head. And some people, there was a movie once, I can't remember, some young kid said, I see dead people.
Oh yeah, Sixth Sense.
Yeah, that's the one. Well, I see business models everywhere. And, instead of dead people, I see business models. And so what is the difference between a project and a business model? The difference is a project is a one-off. So Brad, you and I decide one day, hey, there's a nice house over there. Let's go buy it and add a basement apartment. That's fine. That's a project. And then you see a little retail plaza that's fallen on hard times because of competition, maybe from the internet, from Amazon. And you say, hey, let's go buy that retail plaza. And then the day after that, you say, hey, I'd like to be in the pods business, the portable on-demand storage business. And those are just a bunch of things that you've grabbed, and so you end up with a sack full of projects, but no coherence to it. It's not a business model.
Mhm.
All right, and so projects are one-off. Business models are focused, repeatable developments or investments. They're scalable. All right, so let me give you an example of a business model, okay?
Okay.
And I'm just going to stop sharing just for a minute, just to change the scene here a little bit. So two of my clients, Alex Colligan and Stéphane Gonthier, young men, they're about your age, they have a business model. And their business model, you may have heard of this before, is very, very simple. They buy existing homes that have a detached garage.
Okay.
Have you run across that in my writings?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Maybe on one of your videos.
Yeah, I've done it probably more than once.
Yeah.
So Alex and Stefan came to me, and they had ideas, all over the place, which was okay. But part of my job as your coach and their coach was to focus them in on a business model, something that they're excited about, that they're passionate about, and where their skills are relevant, right? So if you ask me to, I don't know, be a hairdresser, I wouldn't be qualified to do that. I certainly make a mess of anybody's hair. I'm just not qualified for it. So you want to have skills that are relevant. You want to have a great business model that will lead to a very profitable result, not just so you can have a bigger house and a nicer car, but so that you can provide better service to your whole ecosystem, not just to your
Mhm.
clients, to yourself, but to your suppliers too.
Yep.
All right, so Alex and Stefan decided that was their business model. So they would buy a house, and they would put, they would duplex it, so they would have a basement apartment and a so you could get a couple of income streams from it. But they would have a detached garage, because you can search MLS in Canada and many of the websites in the United States. You can filter for properties that already have a detached garage, and the detached garage would become a workshop. The modern term for it is makerspace, because the idea is that millions of Canadians and tens of millions of Americans are looking for personal businesses for life, to have a side hustle, to have some kind of a gig.
Gig economy.
The gig economy, and their timing was amazing. So they were, and it's much, I don't have to tell you, this is much cheaper to buy an existing building or a couple of buildings and renovate and improve it than it is to build new.
Yeah.
You can buy much faster, you can renovate much faster, you can finance much easier, and you can grow much faster. So that's what they did. So their first project ended up with a 4-bedroom apartment on the second floor, a 1-bedroom apartment on the ground floor, a 350 square foot space, which was perfect for co-working space. And then they had a workshop in their side yard, separate from the house. It was a detached garage that they converted to a workshop, so somebody could rent from them, a 1-bedroom apartment and a workshop, or a 4-bedroom apartment and a workshop. And it was very successful. And so after that, they're off to the races. That's a business model, because if you're looking in Ottawa right now for a place to live and work, you're going to go, they're going to become the one. The one means that they're not, that's Steve Lowell's terminology. Steve Lowell is a brilliant guy, and he talks about, if you're going to do something, try and become the one. And, so you start off, any kind of business, tech business, real estate, doesn't matter. You start off in obscurity. You're just one guy trying to, create a business. And then maybe after a while, you get a little better, and you become competitive with other people who are in the same space or similar space. So you go from being totally obscure to being competitive.
Yep.
Then, as you work on your brand, you become a branded enterprise. And so you've moved up to stage 3. Stage 1 being obscurity, stage 2 being a competitive stage 3 being your branded. And every time you move up Steve Lowell's ladder of success, you could charge more money for the same thing because you're better at it. But beyond the branded stage 3, there's a stage 4 where you become the one. All right. And when people say, hey, I've got this really great idea. I'd love to make, wine, but I don't have a place to do it. Hey, you ought to go and talk to Alex Culligan and Stefan Gonthier. They got like 15 places in Ottawa where you can rent both an apartment and a workshop. Really? Is that a thing? Yes, it's a thing. So if they do really, really well, they could become or at least one of the ones. All right.
Right.
And so the reason I wanted to talk about the 4-hour work week, the 4-hour work day, is it brings together a lot of the concepts, that I've kind of been, drilling into you already and many others since then. All right. So another one that I happened very recently, and then I'm going to bring it back to you, is one of my clients has 1,300 hotel rooms in 6 cities and towns. And did you hear me talk about this on one of my webinars?
Yeah, and they converted them into the long-term rentals, studio.
Yeah, so exactly. And just because we're taping this, I would like to have the whole thing. So he was very lucky, unlucky in the sense that he went from having 1,300 rooms pretty much all full, 80, 90% full, he's a very successful guy, to having about 90% vacant. And if you had, your residential portfolio 13 or 14 or however many doors you have now, I think it's around 13, and if they were 90% vacant, that would be bad.
Yep.
But he ended up with 90% vacancy. And he was very lucky. I should show him, I should share my screen again. He was very lucky in the sense that about 1,000 of his 1,300 hotel rooms were already configured as micro suites. So what I said to him when he called me up in the first week of April, and he was very upset, I said, you could pivot probably fairly simply and fairly directly from 1,300 hotel rooms that you have to rent. You have about 1,000 of them that are perfect little micro suites. You can put them into either the medium-term rental market, the MTR market, or the LTR, the long-term rental market. And he said, well, I'm not sure I'm ready to do that. But he thought about it, not for very long, and that's what he's doing. So if you look at it, if he takes 1,000 of those hotel rooms that out of the hotel market and puts them into the long-term rental market, he's gone from having to make 365,000 sales a year to keep 1,000 rooms full, to if he leases out those micro suites, say on with a minimum 2-year lease term, which is what I'm recommending to him, he's reduced 365,000 sales he has to do a year to 500. And
crazy.
so the key to the 4-hour workday, the key to super profitability is finding a business model. And now he's doing it. He's really into it. His costs are dropping. You don't have to send in chambermaids every day to change the beds. And so his costs are way, way lower. And the holy grail of business, I don't know if you can see it on your screen here, is this, CMRR. Whether you're running a tech business, a real estate business, a service business, a coaching practice, doesn't matter, committed monthly recurring revenues. So he's gone from having basically no committed monthly recurring revenues when he's finished with his 1,000 leases on 2 years. He will have the bulk of his income will be committed monthly recurring revenues, and that is really, really important. He's reduced a one-to-many problem. So instead of having to do 365,000 sales a year, he only has to do 500. So he's reduced a one-to-many problem to a one-to-a-few, and that's his business model. So as he got more and more excited about this, I said, well, now we have a business model and we have a vector for scalability. And he said, what the hell is that? I mean, he's a hotel guy. He's not a physicist or a mathematician. So what is a vector for scalability? And I said, well, let me give you an example. This was like literally a 1-minute Google search. And I said, there will be thousands and thousands of small hotels in Canada, the United States, that are not going to survive COVID-19, right? And I
Yep.
said, you could pick up, I think, a lot of these, because he has the capacity to do it. You could pick up 10,000 rooms. So he could go from 1,300 rooms to 10,000, but not to run them as hotels, but to run them as a mix of some in the hotel sector, but most of them in the medium-term rental and the long-term rental market. And I just, in 1 minute of Google searching, I found this hotel, 52-room hotel in Florida for sale. And the most important thing I was able to show him, and now you, is that you could buy this 52-room hotel with $100,000 down, or if you can't find the 100,000, the owner says, right in the lease, right in the ad, I'll no deposit at all. I'll find a way to finance it for you. So you could imagine, for somebody who has real capacity, he could easily add, I think, 10,000 rooms in the next 18 months. That's a business model as opposed to a project. Does it make any sense?
Yep, 100%.
All right, so now it's your turn. What is your business model?
My business model is finding projects. I think that's something I struggled with as a new investor for the last 10 years. Is I'd pick up a property here and there in one city or another city, or I spoke about my partnership with the corporate rental company out west. And it's also in my business life as well. I have a lot of different marketing contracts where I do different things for different clients. So historically for me, it's been very, very scattered. And I realized about 2 years ago that I really needed to focus on one particular expertise, one particular niche, one particular business model, because I've had success and I've had lots of failures as well. But I knew that some of my closest clients are Silicon Valley startups. So I've learned very intimately the power of scalability, about MRR, about all of those different concepts that it takes to scale any kind of company. It doesn't have to be a SaaS company in Silicon Valley. It can be a real estate business based out of Ottawa. You need exactly what you said, that you need that very focused product. It's a product at the end of the day. And if you have 50 products, then it's kind of hard to be an expert in all of them.
Do you remember what happened to Apple after Steve Jobs left the first time?
It started to go downhill.
Did it ever? And eventually, the Apple board fired John Sculley and rehired Steve Jobs. He came back to Apple. And when Steve came back to Apple, he gathered all the top lieutenants around the table, and probably 30 of them, and said, okay, so how many products is Apple offering right now? And everybody around the table kind of looked at each other kind of stupidly and said, well, we don't know, we got lots. And Steve said, what do you mean you don't know? Well, we don't know exactly, we've got all kinds of stuff. We're trying to keep up with Microsoft. Oh, he says, all right. Yep. So we're going to, the meeting lasted 5 minutes. And he said, we're not going to have continue this meeting. What we're going to do is you're all going to come back tomorrow, same time, no exceptions. And you're going to tell me how many products your division is offering, products and services. Now get out. Steve was pretty abrupt, right?
Yeah.
And he probably used a couple of F-bombs in there too. Yeah. And so everybody scattered. And the next day they came back, and it turned out they were offering about, 11 or 1,200 different products and services. And so Steve went, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to offer MacBooks. Yeah. We're going to do this iTunes thing, or back then it was iPods. And once he had finished with the whiteboard, he had, I think, 5 products and services. That's it. And and everybody said, oh, you can't do that. And Steve said, who said that? He said, okay, you're fired. Out. Is there anybody else who wants to tell me that we can't do this? Anybody else? They all shut up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. These are and if you're not working on them, you are now. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you're working on, I don't know, some other project, that's it. You're as of like this minute, you're not doing that. You're working in, you're working on in the selling more MacBooks or selling more iPods, whatever they were back then.
Yeah.
There's only 5 services, and even today, Apple really, they've got iTunes is gone now, so it's Apple Music, Apple TV, the MacBook line, iPads, you know, iPhones. I mean, it's not very many.
Yeah.
And he said, we want to be really, really, really good in a very small number of products and services. And we want to be they're going to be the best designed with the best business. He understood business models, right? So Steve, when he first presented the iPhone to the president and CEO of AT&T, do you know what he said to the president and CEO of AT&T?
No.
He said, we're bringing out a new phone. And the president said, great, AT&T, we're in the business of selling phones. It's going to be called the iPhone. Super. And here's what we're going to do, is you're going to give us $20 a month for every one of these iPhones that you sell to your clients. And the president of AT&T, he was not very polite at that point, said, no effing way will I ever agree to that. And Steve said, fine. I was going to offer you a 2-year exclusivity on what will be the most successful tech product ever, but I'm going to go across the street and offer it to Verizon. So bye. And Steve got up and he started walking out. And the president and CEO of AT&T said, whoa, Steve, tell me again why I would ever give, no carrier had ever given, a cell phone maker, a part of their subscriber base, never. And so Steve talked about the iPhone and iTunes and an app store. Nobody knew what an app store was, but Steve did. And an advertising platform, and on and on and on, all the revenue streams that Apple was going to share with AT&T, but AT&T was going to share with Apple. And within about another hour or so, after the two men calmed down and stopped telling each other to get lost, they had a deal where AT&T was able to offer the iPhone for a period of time. I think it was 2 years, and AT&T was able to add millions and millions and millions of new subscribers, because the only way you could get the first iPhone was through AT&T. And but think about that. Before the iPhone, Brad, let's say you and I work for Motorola. Okay, Motorola. We'll pretend this is a Motorola phone. So Motorola can sell this phone to AT&T for $100, and AT&T can sell it to Brad or Bruce, right, for $200. So Motorola made $100 once. Motorola made very good phones. Remember the flip phones?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were excellent phones, and they were so good that Motorola would get $100 for that phone one time, and maybe they'd have to wait. Yeah, exactly. They may have to wait 5, 6, or 7 years before that phone finally broke. They were so well engineered, and then they'd get another $100. Meanwhile, the iPhone was giving Apple $20 a month per AT&T subscriber, and then later Verizon and Rogers and all the other carriers, plus all the other incredible revenues from the App Store, what was iTunes, Apple Music, Apple TV, whatever. So do you know what the internal rate of return for Apple on their iPhone was?
Oh gosh.
You couldn't even guess.
Yeah.
We did a research paper on it, and we're not sure if it's 100% accurate. It probably isn't, but they made a 288% per annum internal rate of return on the iPhone. We think, my researchers and I, that the Apple iPhone is the most profitable tech product of all time. Maybe the most profitable. It would be like you and me buying a house for $500,000 and being able to rent it for, I don't know, $1.7 million a year. That would be a very good house. And if you find any of those, could you let me know? Because I could use one or two. But
well, that's why they're sitting on more cash than most sovereign governments.
Exactly. It is the most profitable tech product, I think, ever, maybe the most successful product ever. I mean, it's obviously got lots of competition now from Pixel phones and from Samsung phones, etc. But but certainly for
I
at
got
least,
one.
there you go, for at least a decade, it was a phenomenon, 288% per annum. But it wasn't the product. It's not that Apple makes phones that are that much better than, say, Motorola did, or today Samsung. Samsung makes excellent phones, and I'm sure Google does too. It was the business model that propelled them to tremendous, unprecedented success. At one point, I think they were the most valuable company on the planet. And if they're not the most valuable, they're among the most valuable. So we're going to come back again. I'm sorry, I'm really drilling it into, because if I do nothing else for people like yourself, Brad, then help you find a business model that, again, builds on your skills, that you're passionate about, and that you're focused on, then you're very likely to fulfill your own objectives, excuse me, which is to go from, is it 13 doors now?
Yeah.
13 doors, and I saw you want to get to 50.
Yes.
Okay, so let's come back to the question of what is Brad's business model.
So obviously realized about, like I said, 2 years ago, that I needed to focus on one business model. So that's when I partnered with another investor I'd been investing with, as well as another partner, knowing that as I grow, having like-minded people who have been through the same journey as me along the way.
Yep.
I understand the discussion around partners, whether they're good or not. I had a real long-term vision of what we were building. And the business model that I'm focusing on now with these two partners is new build, missing middle multifamilies in the Ottawa area. We've started in tertiary.
Hold on, I'm trying to take notes here, and you could talk faster than I can write. So long-term vision is new builds.
Missing middle.
Yeah.
Multifamily.
And tell me about your partners, the two partners.
Yeah. So know them from my previous job, and the one
Can you
I
tell
bought
me
my
their
first.
first names?
Yep, Brad and Andrew.
Okay.
And they'll likely join in on one of these calls as well.
Well, you know that you can add plus ones for free. So, and the more the merrier. Quite often I end up doing couples coaching. Because if it's the husband, he wants his wife to buy in. If it's the wife, she wants the husband to buy in. Now, I don't. If they have any marital difficulties, yeah, I can't help with that. I'm not qualified for that. But certainly real estate investment and business coaching, I can handle 2 or 3 people, no problem. So Brad, so all I have to remember is Brad. I've got a son by the name of Andrew, and Brad.
There you go.
Well, there you go. We got 2 Brads.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Brad and Andrew. Tell me about Brad and Andrew. What do they do?
So they work for the government. Brad is the one I've known the longest. We bought our first rental property together in Orleans 10 years ago, and we've since added several properties, condos, micro suites in Montreal, duplexes here and there to our portfolio. So it's something him and I had been talking about for a long time, was getting into multifamily. And I always knew it was the right call. We just hadn't really figured out the whole value of using attracting investors. Up until our latest project, we had always been using our own capital, so it was a very slow process. Right. And so another gap that we had was sort of a financial business gap. So we have a very close work colleague who we've known for a long time, who always wanted to get into real estate investing and had a couple of rentals themselves. And he had an MBA, or has an MBA.
And that would be Andrew.
That would be Andrew.
Okay. And he works for the government too, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so Andrew is your financial genius, and Brad is adding what?
Brad, he's a workhorse. I mean, we sort of came up together, I guess.
Do you mind if I ask what Brad's last name is? Because otherwise I'll have 2 Brads in my notes. I won't know which one is which. And if you tell me it's Cartier, I'm going to be really upset.
Well, everyone always calls him Big Brad because his last name's Thiessen, and he's a big German.
Brad. What's his last name?
Thiessen. He's German.
Oh yeah, Thiessen. Oh, I think you sent that name to me before. Okay, so Big Brad Thiessen. What? He's a workaholic.
Well, he's we started investing together, so he knows the real estate investing game almost as well as I do. So yeah, he does a lot of the back end stuff sourcing deals, chasing down financing. I mean, just like Workhorse, he doesn't have any accreditations or anything like that, but we've
Okay, and Andrew's job is financing.
Yes.
Okay, and what is Brad Cartier's job?
My job, so I've been more focused on the acquisitions. So I will do a lot of the front end work to find these opportunities, pro forma them, and get them to our broker, and see them through the build. And then Andrew does a bit of the financing as well, but he also does a lot of the back end stuff. Like he's been managing the latest project on the ground with tenants and stuff like that. Brad's been overseas for 2 years, so our roles are kind of murky, just based on
okay, so that's your first clue, Sherlock. So Brad, I've got a little bit of homework for you. You got your notepad there?
Yeah, let me pull it up here.
Okay.
Okay.
So what I need you to do is I need you to tell me who does what. Okay?
Okay.
So it cannot be murky. That is a recipe for partnership disaster. Murky is bad, okay?
Okay.
If you get a glass of water, and it's full of something that's murky, you're probably not going to drink it.
No.
Okay. So let me just describe some of the things that I think should go into this. It's simple stuff. Somebody has to be in charge of the business model. What the heck are Brad and Andrew actually doing? We kind of know what it is, but somebody has to be in charge of that. Somebody has to be in charge of acquisitions. Somebody has to be in charge of financing. Somebody has to be, are you writing this down?
Yep.
Okay. I don't mean to be too bossy, but ask my wife. I'm bossy. So let's just, so we've got the business model comes first.
And what do you mean by that? Like a strategic thinker about how we're positioning our brand, productizing?
Well, if I haven't made clear what a business model is yet, I have
I
held my
understand.
first 45-minute test with you. I'm definitely giving myself an F.
No, I understand 100% what you mean by that, but in charge of a business model.
Because your business model does need to be revisited, every 6 months or every year.
Okay.
Because, circumstances change, right? Like if you had asked me 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I might have said, hey, let's work on an Airbnb model for you. Not today. All the guys I know in Airbnb are, they're jumping off bridges. Well, hopefully they're not jumping off bridges, but bad things are happening to their models. So models do have to be revisited. If I were working with Apple, we would be revisiting this business model too for the iPhone, because there's lots of cool things that I could think of that they're not doing with it. But that's, unless they pay me, I'm definitely not going to help Apple. They don't need any help from me, or at least not voluntary. But so you do need somebody in charge of the business model. Either you, and it should be you in my opinion, but because you would not be happy if it was anybody else. But Brad Cartier should take charge of the business model, and every 6 months you're going to look at it and say, oh, it's fine. But it's like what happened to my hotel guy. He's 80-90% full, making buckets of money from his 1,300 rooms in 6 towns. Life is good, and then all of a sudden it's horrible. So we changed his business model. So there will be, no matter how good your business model is, even Apple, they will have to change, and you will too. So, okay, so number one, somebody takes charge of the business model. Somebody has to do acquisitions.
Yep.
Okay. Somebody has to do financing. Okay.
Yep.
That's obvious. Somebody has to do HR. Even though you only have 3 people in your sort of group, there is an HR component, and that is, Warren Buffett says, the most important decision you will make, other than the decision to start your business, is who you have on the bus with you. And that's not me. That's Warren Buffett's, incredibly smart. And he says, if you have, conniving, dishonest people, you want them to be really dumb and lazy, because if they're really smart and hardworking, they will screw your company up big time. So if you have anybody on the bus with you that you don't trust, obviously you have to get them off the bus. So you do need to revisit your partnership and the people. And by HR, I'm not just referring to the owners, which in this case, the three of you, but also who are your suppliers? If you have a renovator, a contractor, a lawyer, a realtor, a mortgage broker, okay, that's part of the HR job. And you should not have anybody on the bus with you, even like I fire appraisers all the time. If an appraiser, like I'll give you an example. One of my clients, he was the very first person to build a coach house. And his name's Alex. He has a beautiful home. And you know what a coach house is, right?
Yeah.
He builds a fabulous coach house. He's a builder. And it was unbelievable. It was like huge coach house and beautifully done. So we valued it on an income basis, because it's hard to find comparables for coach houses. They're so new. I mean, it's not really new. People have been building coach houses since there were coaches, you know, where horse and buggies, right? But it's new, at least in Ottawa in this era. For people your age, it's brand new. So we valued it. So his house was worth, you know, $700,000, a beautiful home. And then he had a $220,000 coach house in the backyard. It was really nicely done, beautifully finished. And it produces a lot of income. He uses the upstairs for, it just rents it out. And the downstairs is where he has his business. I think he has 3 offices in the basement. And so he valued the office space in the basement at $1,500 a month, because he would have had to pay that if he just went and rented an office or a couple of offices in a co-working space. So even though he was occupying it himself, he's paying himself $1,500 a month. He actually did a lease.
Okay.
Between himself, he owned this property. He and his wife owned it in his own name, and he did a lease, you know, to his company. So it was $1,500, $1,600 a month. And then the upstairs he had rented for about $1,800 a month. So this thing was producing, you know, over $3,000 a month in income, and around $2,000 a month in net operating income, which is $24,000 a year. And if you value that at, say, 5%, so let me just, you know, so he ended up with $24,000 of net operating income, and he valued it, I think we used a cap rate of 5%. So it came in, I don't know if you can read it, right? So we said his property, in our opinion, was worth $700,000 plus another $500,000, about 1.1 or 1.2 million. The appraiser comes along and he presents himself. I actually was there because it was the very first time we'd had a coach house completed. At least I think it was the very first one in Ottawa. And but I could be wrong with that. And the appraiser said, "Oh, no, I can't value anything but the house. Oh, these outbuildings I can't value." So I got mad and I said, "You're fired." And you know, because I have a temper a little bit. Actually, I you know, if I feel hard done by quite a bit. So I said, "That's it. You're not doing the appraisal. You go away." And I wasn't really pleasant to him. Probably I should have been, but I wasn't. And I said, "Alex, this guy's fired." So the next appraiser shows up, and he said the same thing. You know, our lender has directed us not to evaluate any outbuildings. I said, but this is not an outbuilding. It's not like a little, you know, I don't know, shed in the back. It's a $220,000, $480,000 worth value thing on an income basis. And the guy says, "Look, I'm not allowed to value the coach house, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer the value to the main house." I said, you are? How are you going to do that? He said, "I'm just going to add up the income and just going to say, yeah, this place is producing this kind of income, and I can value it." And he gave Alex a valuation of just over $1 million.
Okay.
So when I say HR is incredibly important, or Warren Buffett says that, he's right. And so that's not just obviously the people who work directly with you, but your whole stakeholder group. And one of the things that I've learned over a career is hire slow and fire fast, right?
Yep.
And that's important. So business model, acquisitions, financing, HR. Now, the next thing that we need is we need somebody to take charge of property management. We need somebody to take charge of leasing. We need somebody to take charge of doing CMAs. Do you know what a CMA is?
Market analysis?
Comparative market analysis. And that has to come from one of you guys. And if you're not qualified to do it, you have to find you have a realtor you're working with?
I know some realtors, yeah.
Well, I'm a realtor too, but you need realtors are not allowed to do appraisals. For an appraiser, you need an appraisal, but realtors are allowed to do comparative market analysis, and many of these realtors are really good at that. Some are terrible, but many of them are good. Most realtors, Brad, can do comparative market analysis only on one basis, which is comparables. But after this session of ours is over, I will send you how I do them. Okay, so you'll have a model.
Okay.
And I think you should share that model with Brad and Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
I think you should. And we do not have any, whether it's commercial or residential, doesn't matter. No appraiser gets to view one of our properties and appraise one of our properties without a properly done CMA.
Okay.
And we get our realtors to do that. Some realtors will do it for free, because they want to get listings. And you okay, Brad?
Yeah, I'm just closing the window.
Are you cold?
I know, it's just banging the door. The wind's blowing pretty badly out here.
Yeah, well, yeah, I hear you. So some realtors will do it for you for free. A guy like me, I would charge you money for it. So see if you can find a realtor to do it. But I'll send you one. So we do CMAs with 3 methodologies, okay? The first one is comparables. So if you have a townhouse in Barrhaven, you can find 8 or 9 very comparable sales, usually within a few months, and within a tight geography. It's easy to do. So comparables are fine, for a townhouse. But if you had a townhouse with a 1-bedroom apartment at the lower level that was renting out, you might not be able to get it done with comparables. So
how do you find comparables if you're not a realtor? You don't have access to the MLS data.
No, that's why you need a realtor.
Okay.
Yeah. But you and Andrew and the other Brad, you need to understand them, because this is, if you don't get your appraisals done properly, it will sink your ship. I don't care how smart you think you are. You've got to have good appraisals. Okay. So, but the key to that, in my opinion, is good CMA. And if you have a good realtor, he or she will know how to do them properly. And if they don't know, you should bring your realtor in on one of these sessions and say, Bruce, my agenda is I want to know how to do CMAs, and I'm bringing, Shelley in, and I'll teach Shelley how to do it. We'll spend an hour on a CMA, and I'll walk her through it.
Okay.
All right. Or your partners, but I can show you how to do it.
Yep.
So number one, you can do comparables. But if you had a townhouse with a basement apartment, the other townhouse might sell for $400,000, but your basement apartment is producing $1,500 a month in extra income. And most realtors and most appraisers will say, well, it can't be worth any more than the other guy. Well, that is just not true. Because if my daughter, I have 5 kids, and they're all in their 20s and 30s, if they were to come to you, and so here's that townhouse not far from your townhouse, and it's just a townhouse I can buy for $400,000, or I can buy this townhouse, and it's got $1,500 a month in income coming out of the basement. This has got to be worth more to my kids. And all of my kids, by the way, are buying those kinds of products. They're not buying this one, they're buying this one. Okay?
Yep.
So number one, you can look at comparables, but often for people like you and me who are doing a lot with animation, adding new revenue streams, those comparables will vastly underestimate what your properties are worth. So that's bad. So number one, you look at the comparables. Number two, you can do cost to complete less depreciation. So let's say you bought that townhouse for $400,000 and you put in a basement apartment for $80,000, and the basement apartment is very new. you could say that the cost to complete this was 480,000. So it's worth, we hope, at least 480. Now, if you had bought that townhouse and you put a pool in the backyard for $80,000 and did some landscaping, you just threw your $80,000 out. You understand that?
Yep.
Yeah, like there's some renovations that you can do that, you know, if you have a bunch of kids and you want to have a swimming pool, have a swimming pool, but don't consider that an investment.
Mm-hmm.
That is not an investment. That's just a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
So you and I could buy a townhouse for $400,000 and put a pool in the backyard and do some beautiful landscaping for 80 grand, and it's still worth 400,000. And in fact, it might even be worth less than 400,000 because the next person who buys it doesn't want to have to maintain that damn pool, heat it, pay for the electricity and the gas and all the other costs of maintaining it. So you probably could actually go down in value.
Yep.
All right. So that's not an investment, but putting a basement apartment in certainly is. All right. So the second thing is cost to complete, less depreciation. Now, if it's a fairly new renovation, there's really no depreciation. Mm-hmm. The third way is on income. So if this townhouse over here is being rented for $2,000 a month, and this one over here with the basement apartment is at $3,000 a month, then just sort of off the top of your head, this has got to be worth 25, 30, 40, 50% more than this one.
But don't most lenders not allow income approach to residential?
So it depends, okay? It's like that guy who showed up, the first appraiser for Alex, and said, I can't appraise the back building. That's it, that's all. And we fired him. The next guy had to do a workaround. So you have to find people, lenders and appraisers. We're not trying to say anything that's untrue.
Right.
But for example, I do a lot with secondary lenders. I work with Equitable Bank, if you know Equitable Bank.
Yep.
You know, EQ Bank, they don't care. They'll finance you for 3 or 4 properties, 13 properties. I've got one guy, he bought 307 properties through our brokerage. He's a wealthy dentist. And he's going to retire in about another 8 or 9 years with $900,000 a month in net operating income from his real estate portfolio. It's fantastic what he's done, but he was my first coaching client, or one of the first. So, and I swear to God, Brad, we have probably 250 of those with Equitable Bank. So Equitable Bank will send you an appraiser who, at least in my experience, will work with you and will at least listen to you. And, we can't tell the appraiser, you have to do this, but we can work with them. Do you know what anchor pricing is? Brad?
Sorry, you cut out there for about 2 seconds.
Do you know what anchor pricing is?
No.
All right. So, if I was running Home Depot, I'll have a chainsaw here for like $1,000, and I'll have a really chintzy chainsaw over here for 99 bucks. You can cut something that's maybe that size with it. And you've got $1,000. So you come in and you're looking for a chainsaw, and I say, I got this really amazing chainsaw. It does everything you could ever imagine, including make coffee for everybody. And it costs you $1,000. You go, oh, $1,000? I don't got $1,000. Well, I've got this other one over here, which is, $99. It won't last very long and can't cut very much. But it's for $99. Well, I wanted something better. Well, actually, now that you mentioned, I have a $499 model. So the $1,000 chainsaw is something called an anchor price. They know they're not going to sell very many of those. So what we do with our CMAs is we try and anchor a price in the mind of the appraiser before he shows up.
Okay. So
you and your realtors and Andrew and the other Brad, you work on a CMA. You send it to the appraiser before he shows up, and you say, we're not trying to do your job for you, but we just wanted you to know kind of how we look at things. And we looked at this building on comparables. We have a few comparables. We have some nice pictures. We looked at it on a cost to complete basis. We looked at it on an income basis, and we think it's worth about $505,000. And because appraisers can't possibly know all the renovations that you've done, we also send a list of the work that we've done.
Okay.
And the reason we do that is, if we've replaced part of the electrical system, if we've done all kinds of other things that is large, improve the insulation, the appraiser is not going to know that. So most of the appraisers are actually now, after I've been doing this for 7 years now, the coaching thing, most of the appraisers, certainly the ones I work with, they're now asking us, can you send us your stuff before they go out? But that was a process, Sometimes they say, oh, no, we're just going to walk through. It takes us 5 minutes to walk through. A 5-minute walkthrough will not tell you what's behind the walls. Even an hour walkthrough won't tell you that either. So, no, we just say, we want you to know, and here's the full list. In that list, and by the way, this is all in the document I'm going to send you.
Okay.
Also in that is we put in every project, and this is something very important for you and your two partners. We put in that project, in that budget, we put in a management fee for you guys. And we, if you and your buddies should all keep track of their hours. Like if you are spending hours on the acquisition, then on the development, on the renovation, track those hours and charge them out at $85 an hour. And you actually put that in your valuation, because your time is not free, Brad.
Put them in which valuation?
When you're doing your CMA.
Okay.
So you remember I talked about a cost to complete?
Yep.
That's one of the things that you're doing in your CMA.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say between you and the other Brad and Andrew, you put in 500 hours, which is not on you might say, oh, no way would do that. Probably, if you're managing a project for 10 hours a week between the three of you for 50 weeks, that's 500 hours. All right. So 500 hours at $85 an hour. I don't know if you can read it again.
42,500.
Something like that. Yeah, 42,500. And the first time we did that, the very first appraiser who saw that spreadsheet accepted it. Because you should get paid for your work. It's not free.
Yep.
Okay. So anchor pricing means you say, so if you think the appraiser is going to come in and value your property based on comparables and a 5-minute walkthrough at 400,000, but you've sent him a CMA in advance that says 504, you've anchored 504,000 in his mind. It's a very powerful part of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. All right, it's how to manipulate people. So I used to teach NLP, and some of my male students thought, oh, this is great because they can manipulate young women, right? And I said, no, it's not for that. It's for business, not to be used inappropriately. Yeah. But since I teach a lot of young people, sometimes they're thinking about other things in business. So the CMA is very important. Somebody's going to take charge of that.
Okay.
All right. So
we ran into, just a quick aside, we ran into that problem with, we built 2 semi-detached, and in the basement we had full in-law suites, so full one bedroom basement units that we were getting $1,500 a month for each, but the appraiser would only appraise it as a semi-detached. So even though we were getting $2,200 for the top and $1,500 for the bottom, the valuation we got was $350, and we said, there's at least $100,000 extra for these basement suites, but that's all they would.
So that's a guy you should fire and never hire again. Brad?
Sorry, I lost you there.
That's a guy you should fire.
Should have fired him?
Well, you should never use him again.
Well, it was the bank's appraiser.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can ask the bank for another appraiser. Say, we're just not accepting this guy. And if the bank doesn't agree, you fire the bank.
Okay, understood.
And when I said to you, one of my clients has 250 mortgages with Equitable Bank, you're going to pay an extra percent from Equitable than you would from, but when you have discipline and your properties are doing 6% cap rates, 7%, 8%, some of my rural properties, 11, 12%, whether you pay 2.5 to 3.5 or 3.5 to 4.5% really doesn't matter that much.
Right.
What matters is that you get enough financing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so after the CMAs, you have to have somebody who's handling the appraisals and the appraisers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's different from CMAs. The CMAs are done by realtors with you guys. The appraisers and appraisals are being done by, obviously, lender appraisers, okay? So that's something, somebody else has to take charge of that. Somebody has to take charge of the refinancing. Okay.
That's not the same as financing. It will be a separate bucket.
Yeah, the financing is one thing, and the refinancing is incredibly important. Something else that I teach is that I would like you and your partners to look at your amortizations.
Okay.
And your realtors, your bankers, your lenders, your accountants, your financial advisors, they're all going to say, Brad, you should have long amortization periods. It'll improve your cash flow. That is the worst advice ever. Amortization is your best friend. The dentist I just mentioned a few minutes ago, we have almost all of his properties now on 11-year amortizations. Wow. Because he has very strong cash flow. So I don't want you to shorten the amortizations to the point where you have to find money every month to pay for your mortgage. But I want you to shorten them up to the point where you have enough cash flow to pay them, but that's about all. Maybe a little bit more, because amortization is, how long does it take to pay off a 30-year mortgage?
30 years.
Right. How old are you now?
I'm 35.
Yeah, you'll be 65 before your friggin' mortgages are paid off. So I have some mortgages that have 3-year amortization periods. They're small mortgages. I have some mortgages of my own that are 11 years. And I do have some 20 and 25-year mortgages on some of the bigger properties that I own, just simply because the cash flow isn't there to tighten them up. But if you look at the difference between having a 30-year amortization period and 25-year, you're paying off a lot more. And the difference between 25 and 20 years is even greater. And the difference between 20 and 11 is night and day. So in terms of growing a portfolio, amortization is your best friend.
See, we were sort of thinking the opposite. And now that I'm hearing your perspective, makes a lot of sense. We wanted the cash to accumulate in the bank account so we could make another acquisition.
Here's what actually happens though. Okay, Brad and Andrew have a portfolio. It's producing $10,000 a month in extra cash flow. And Brad and Andrew decide, let's just let that build up in our bank account and we'll make another acquisition every 10 months. We'll have an extra 100 grand. The other Brad says, guys, I really want a new computer. And my car, and that trip to Cuba, I can't resist it. Come on, let's just take a little bit of it. And so I check in with you three guys 10 months from now. How's that 100 grand coming along? And you say, well, actually, we have about 14,000 left because Brad bought a new car. Brad Cartier went with his family to Disney World, and Andrew partied with his wife in Europe. So it's gone. I'm telling you, brother. Listen, so here's what, I got a lot of experience. So for what it's worth, Brad, listen, as a coach, I'm trying to provide as many good ideas as I can, but you're the final decision maker, not me. But people are very, very good at paying their bills monthly, but not so good at saving. And if I had to rely on my wife to save for our retirement, I'd be in real trouble. My wife's a girly girl, but she never bet a dollar she couldn't spend. And I love her dearly, but there's no way. And I have to admit, I'm not much of a saver either, because I have 5 kids and 3 grandsons, I like to spoil them. And so, if I have an extra $10,000 lying around, I might call up one of my daughters and her husband and say, "Hey, you guys want a trip to Cuba? Let me treat you to something." One of my daughters just had a little boy, and that's the kind of thing I would do. Right now, obviously, in COVID-19, nobody's going nowhere. But if in normal times, I would say, look, they're based in Calgary. Why don't you go to Arizona for 2 weeks and just relax? And here's $5,000 or $7,500. Go and have a holiday on me. So I'm really not very good at it either, but I'm a very good investor.
Mhm.
So the reality is that if you and the other two fellows shorten your amortization periods, you guys will make sure that you pay your mortgage every month. You will do that. You will not forget to pay your mortgage. And then over the next 2 years, on a $500,000 property with, say, a 15-year amortization, lo and behold, you'll have paid off $75,000 in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And
And
isn't that more tax efficient?
so let me just finish. So
Okay.
so that's a good question. So your principal owing is coming down really fast, and hopefully it's a good property. The value is going up, and it's opening up more and more and more room. So say that $500,000 property in the next 3 years went up by $100,000, and your mortgage went down by $75,000. You've opened up $175,000 in new room for financing. If you could finance 80% of that on a refi 3 years from now, 80% of $175,000 is like around $145,000. You can pull that out tax-free. There's no income tax on that because it's not income.
Right.
And so let's say you and Brad and Andrew 3 years from now, you've got another property you want to buy, and you say, well, you talk to Brad and Andrew and say, hey, anybody got $145,000 in a bank account they don't know what to do with? And they all look at you like you've got two heads. And they said, no, not really. And you've got a big family, and you say, I don't even have it either. Oh yeah, but remember Bruce told us to short up we've got it in one of our little projects over here. Amortization is your best friend. Do not let and what your mortgage broker will tell you, oh, don't worry about the short amortization period. You can save up your money and you can apply it once a year, pay down your mortgage once a year. No one does that, right? Same problem. If you
Yeah.
saved up $145,000, you're not going to put it down on the mortgage. You're going to buy that new car,
Mhm.
right? And you're going to, buy a stupid swimming pool for $80,000 in your backyard. That money will be gone. So
Yep.
so you have to have the discipline, and your partners have to have the discipline to understand how to really do this. Because once you get into the swing of it, the amortization thing is like a perpetual motion machine. It is the most powerful engine for finding money to grow your portfolio. It's not having an endless number of investors. It's amortization.
Okay.
All right, I drilled that. So what I'd like you to do is for you to have the first crack at it. Who's taking charge of these major areas? And then I want you to run that by Brad and Andrew. Now,
Okay.
if they come back to you and say, well, I don't really want to do any of this, then you have to ask yourself, what are they doing?
Mhm. Yep. No, and I know they'll be eager to take on some of these.
Well, as long as you're not doing it all.
Right.
Like the one thing I don't want you to do is to carry passengers. Okay?
Okay.
That is not fun. And that will get old. You will resent it after a year or two where you're doing everything, and the boys are saying, this is great. We're making tons of money, but we're not doing any work. We got Brad Cartier to do all the work. Well, you won't last.
Right. No, 100%.
Okay. So now the next thing I want you to talk to the boys about, but not until they've had a chance to get to know me a little bit, if they join one of these sessions, okay?
Okay.
Is I want you to talk to the boys at some point, and you have to remember this, it has to go on your agenda, it can't be mine. I want
Okay.
you to talk to Andrew and Brad about a non-partnership partnership model.
Okay.
Do you know what that is?
No.
It's something I've been working on for the last few years.
Okay.
There are still two chairs in heaven waiting for the first two people to get there, first two partners to get there and still like each other. There's vacant chairs up there in heaven. And so what I do with a lot of my partnerships is I advise them to get into a non-partnership partnership model. And let me give you an example. You remember the business model I talked about between Alex and Stefan?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they buy a house with a detached garage, and that's their model.
Yep.
And I said, what I'd like you guys to do, because they like working together, and you know, sometimes 1 + 1 can make 3, which is good. And hopefully here you got 1 + 1 + 1, you got 3 ones and make 5. All very good. But what I want you to do is I want you to work on a non-partnership partnership model. Whereas if Alex and Stefan do 10 of these projects together, I think they're at more than that now, but if they did 10, then 5 of them would end up in 100% owned by Alex and 5 would be 100% owned by Stefan.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that, you know, you're a young man, but as you get older, say 10 years from now, you know, Brad might say, you know what, I'm going to cash out. And you might say, well, I don't want to cash out. I want to give these properties to my kids. Well, I'm not interested in giving them to your kids. I just want money. I'm going to go run off to Costa Rica. I met a new girl. You know, middle-aged men do that, right? You know, they're 45 or 50 years of age. They find a new interest, and then they go crazy, and they throw everything. They throw the old wife out and leave their families. I think it's atrocious. And they run off with the younger woman, and they want cash.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying this is what happened to your partners, but it could. And so let's say 10 years from now, you have 50 properties, and you know, 16 or 17 of them are owned 100% by you, Brad, 16 or 70 by the other Brad, and 16 or 70 by Andrew. Then you can each find your own future with no regard to the other person. So if the other Brad wants to sell off all his portfolio and run off with that young woman, go for it.
And how do you reconcile the fact that all properties may not be created equal? Some may be valued.
I'll tell you how I did that. I've done a few of these. One in 2018, where we had 2 partners. They were brothers, actually, who were all of a sudden not getting along. And I've been coaching them for a long time. And you know, when partners don't get along, it can be vicious, right? It can be terrible. I mean, God forbid you get a divorce. Divorces can be just awful. You know, I love my wife, and I would never want to get divorced. You know, the 2 fastest ways to get poor, or there's 3. Own a horse ranch, own an NHL team, and get divorced. Those are the 3 fastest ways to get poor. I've done only one of those. Eugene Melnick, who owns the team, has done all 3. He had a horse ranch in Florida, which was that's a way to lose millions of dollars. He got divorced. His wife got a $650 million US judgment against him. Oh. That's a lot of money he had to pay her. And the third thing is his team, I think, loses 40 to 50 million US dollars a year.
Yep.
You know, thank you. Anyway, I only did 1 out of 3, but he did all 3. So don't get divorced, Brad.
I won't. My old man actually he's on his 6th wife. So I've had a lot of lessons in what not to do in relationships.
That's no thanks. You know, I've got a wife and 5 kids and 3 grandsons, and I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize that, not for all the love and money in the world.
No, 100% agree.
100%, Brad. I admire you for that, by the way.
Thank you.
I do. I admire you and respect that. Men should have discipline. They need discipline. So, so what was the question? Oh, yes. So the 2 brothers, oh my God, it was the worst mediation. But finally we resolved it. I mean, it's quite a big portfolio, you know, worth a few $100 million. So finally we resolved it. there were about 80 some properties involved, some commercial properties, some industrial properties, some residential. So they were all different values, right? And so we had them all. We didn't do appraisals on them. We did CMAs on them, right? We had some realtors. We paid for it. They paid for it. We had some realtors do good quality CMAs for commercial, industrial, and residential. And we literally had 80 or 85, little cards, sort of the size of those cards you used to use in school, where it said, 1, 2, 3, 4, any street, fair market value, $1 million, net operating income this, cap rate this, etc. So we had 85 cards on the table, and what we did was the two men came in with their advisors, and we flipped a coin, and I think I think Larry went first, and Larry was allowed to pick any two properties, all right? And so let's say he picked, one for $1 million and one for $500,000. So he has $1.5 million worth of properties that he's picked. Then his brother was allowed to pick whether it's one or it's three or whatever many it was until he got to $1.5 million. So if it was $1 million and 500,000 that Larry picked, then his brother John could pick, say, 3 houses that were worth 500,000 each. So he got to $1.5 million. And then after he was finished, then Larry got to pick 2 more. So it went 2, 2, 2, 2, except that sometimes it would be 2, 1 or 2, 3, right? Because the amounts were the same. So it was the only way, and within about an hour and a half, we had resolved it. And so this pile, and these are called butterfly transactions. It's just a term that tax attorneys and tax accountants use. So we were able to divide the portfolio using what's called a butterfly transaction. So there was no land transfer tax and no deemed disposition. But trust me on that. I'm an engineer and a realtor and a coach. I cannot, other than describing it the way I did, I can't tell you any more about how they did it.
So, but in our case, where we're just starting out, are you suggesting we structure ourselves where each individual property that we in the future are acquiring to have one person own it, or can we do it retroactively? And
so you can do it either way, but you have to talk to your partners about it. You can say, because this is a way to preserve your good relationships with Andrew and Brad. So let's say 3 years from now, you have 6 properties and you own 2 and the other Brad owns 2 and Andrew owns 2, and Andrew decides, look, I've just taken a job. I'm going to work in Australia for the next 5 years. I'm out. Okay. There's no hard feelings. The 2 properties that Andrew owns, he can sell them. He can have property management manage them. He can do whatever he wants with them, refinance them, not refinance them, do whatever he wants with them. So you can do it together, but as long as you have an understanding that every few years, I wouldn't wait like Larry and John did until 40 years have gone by. That's too long. But every 4 or 5 years, every 2 or 3 years, you can say, hey, listen, we've done 5 properties, we've done 10. Maybe we should, make sure that you're on title here and I'm on title there, and because a non-partnership, so it is a non-partnership partnership, if you get my meaning.
Yep.
All right. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Oh, excuse me.
Oh,
sorry, Maddie. What's up there, buddy?
You just need to read that. It's really important.
What is it?
It's loan for small businesses from the federal government.
Oh, yes, I'm aware of it. Thank you. Thank you very much. So that's my youngest son.
Oh, okay.
So you understand it, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
So we'll have that discussion.
All right. So, but enough of that. So let's go back to your business model. So tell me again, your business model is?
Acquiring new build, missing middle multifamily properties in the Ottawa area.
Yeah. And why is it that you want to do new builds?
We want to do new builds for 2 reasons. One, well, probably 3. One, none of us are builders, so expertise is one. Number 2, is we can take advantage of HST rebates. And number 3 is we can control the end product a bit better. And we found that we can maximize rents by buying new compared to obviously comparables that are older.
So,
But I think the main one, Bruce, is a comfort level.
okay, I hear you. So my twist on this model might be that you might consider acquiring property that has existing income where you could add to it. All right. I'm not saying you should change your business model. You know, you want to do new builds to address the missing middle. I'm all over that. I think it's a great idea. But can I show you the fish that got away?
Sure.
All right. Just because I think it might be a model, at least for you and your partners, to consider. All right. I'll see if I can find it. It's my fish story.
Well, one thing we just looked at was a duplex that was on a plot of land that was 2 acres, and running the numbers on whether the duplex could carry the property while we built something else on that lot. That's definitely something we're looking at.
Okay, you're on the same wavelength with me. So just let me see if I can find this story.
Okay.
I hope I can find it. It's my one fish story. I actually have 2 fish stories, but this is one. Come on, Firestone. It's not showing up. I got to remember what street. Oh shoot! I got to find it because it's such a good story and it'll really help you.
You can always email it to me after.
No. This is all about training, man. I got to find it. I just can't remember. Oh, this is too bad.
Do you want me to give you a minute while I run and get my charger?
Go get your charger.
Okay. All right.
All right. You all plugged in?
Yep, we're charging up.
Oh, you have to turn on your speaker or something. Oh, shoot. Oh, I turned it off. My fault.
We good?
Yeah, my fault. Okay, I did find it.
Okay.
All right. So I am going to show you that this is, it's one of my frustrations. It's my fault. So we're going to talk about the Gigaplex after this, okay? It was on your agenda.
Yeah.
So this is 160 Bayswater. It's the one that got away, the fish story. So this is 160 Bayswater here. This is my wife, Dawn, by the way. Wave hi.
I saw her on the webinar the other day.
There you go. And this is one of the realtors who works for me. His name is Simon Case. So this house here on Bayswater, you know where Bayswater is, right?
Yep.
Has 9 legal micro suites.
Wow.
Right. So I go and visit it, and it's got 9 legal micro suites. I go, oh my God. Now the micro suites were in terrible shape. Didn't matter. They were legal. They all had their own ingress and egress, and I could fix them up like that. All right. Here's Simon. Hi, Simon. And you can see here's one of them. Here's another one. Here's another one. They all had their own individual ingress and egress, and they had their own little micro kitchens. Obviously, I could change those, upgrade the bathrooms, make them a lot nicer. But here's what happened. I walk into the backyard, and there is a laneway in the back. So you've got a road in the front and a laneway in the back. And I realized if I buy this, I can build a gigaplex in the backyard.
The zoning would allow for that?
Yes, and because it has like a traditional Main Street zoning. And I said, oh my gosh, I am going to get a free gigaplex site. What do you think it costs to buy a lot in Ottawa these days?
A lot there, probably 600-700.
Yeah, it's between 450,000 and 550,000 for a lot. That's just for an empty lot.
Yeah.
Now, when I show you the numbers, you're gonna feel sick, as I do. I mean, this is back in 2018. So here's 160 Bayswater. This is the main road, and then you can see the laneway here. And here is the back lot, which has its own frontage on the laneway.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a map. You can see from Bayswater to Parliament Hill is, maybe 10 minutes. You can certainly walk to the river, right? It's not far away. It's a beautiful walk up there. The asking price in 2018 was $599.
Oh.
The selling, it had been on the market over 200 days. So, and the selling price, it was eventually sold for $525. Guess how much there were 2 offers that came in at the same time. My offer was $550,000, and the seller sold it to the other guy for $525.
No
and
condition.
I said, what the heck? I was $25,000 higher. Why didn't you sell it to me? And the realtor told me, the seller hates your guts, Bruce. I said, he does? I don't even know the guy. What was his name again? He tells me the name. I said, I don't think I've ever met him. Let me check my computer, right? My computer's the other half of my brain. And I said, I don't know this guy. And he said, no, he hates you because he's a Toronto Maple Leaf fan.
Oh God.
I said, he refused to sell it to me. He said, yes, you took away the midweek broadcasts of the Toronto Maple Leafs in Ottawa. We brought the Senators here. This is a true story. We did a deal with Montreal. So right from the start of the Senators era in 1992, the Senators could broadcast into Montreal, and Montreal Canadiens could broadcast here. I said to the Montreal Canadiens, look, you've got a lot of fans in Ottawa. I'll let you continue to broadcast in here. It's our market, as long as it won't cost you any money, as long as we're allowed to broadcast into Montreal. And the Montreal Canadiens at that time were led by Ron Corey, and they said, that's not really a very fair deal for you. And I said, actually, it is. I said, you've got 200,000 Montreal Canadiens fans in Ottawa, and they're going to be happy. And we have no Ottawa Senator fans in Montreal. But I'm going to tell you that in another generation, we will. Because if we become a good team at some point, and we became a very good team under the leadership of Daniel Alfredson, and we challenged for a Stanley Cup. We went to the Stanley Cup Finals. We won a President's Trophy. So if you go to Montreal now, let's say you had a younger brother, and your younger brother, you're a huge Montreal Canadiens fan living in Montreal. Your younger brother, maybe he's 5 or 6, he wants to give his older brother the gears, and he says, well, I'm cheering for the Senators. He doesn't know anything about the Senators, but he says, I'm just to make his older brother mad. And then, of course, he starts cheering at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years of age for the Senators, and by the time he's 15 or 16, he's a Sens fan, for real.
Mhm.
And so I said, so right now we have about 250,000 Montreal Canadian fans in Gatineau and Ottawa. And in Montreal, we have about 150,000. We measured it. I don't know now, it might be less, but we had 150,000 really, really strong Ottawa Senator fans in Montreal, because Montreal's a big city. And it's mainly younger brothers and younger sisters who just want to give their older brothers and older sisters the gears. So he has been harboring a grudge against me since 1992. And in 2018, he finally had a chance to kick me in the pants. It's his property. He doesn't have to sell it to the highest bidder. So let me see. Let me just go back. So let me just show you the numbers. So I offered 550, 500. The 9 micro suites, I would have renovated the building back then for about $135,000, paid some land transfer tax, some legal costs, some building inspection fees. I would have ended up with about $700,000 investment in this property. But look at the cap rate.
Mm.
With those 9 micro suites, I would have put, and by the way, I'd get a lot more for the micro suites today than I would have back in 2018. But I had it in here for $995. And some of my clients who are doing micro suites, Brad, are getting stupid amounts of money from them. Like I have one young woman I coach. Well, she's not young now. I mean, she's 40. She has 5 kids, and she's the breadwinner for her family. And I said, well, she does micro suites, and her name's B. And I said, B, I was getting back then about $1,000 a month from them. So you probably can get that for yours. She's got a bunch of hers close to the hospitals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Oh, professor, no, I could do much better than that." I said, "Well, how much better?" She's getting $1,400 or $1,500 a month for her micro suites.
We have some 300 square foot ones in Montreal, and we're getting 1350.
Yeah, well, she gets 13, 14, and she's got some at 15 or even higher. She's really good at what she does, and they're very, very, very highly branded. So anyway, we would have ended up with about 11% cap rate and a free Gigaplex site. So I'm mad as hell.
Yep.
Enough of that. So, so one of the things that you asked about is the missing middle. There are a couple of models to attack the missing middle, and one of them is the Gigaplex.
Yep,
did you ever look at that Bloomberg video?
The one that you guys submitted to? Yes, I did.
And so are you and Brad and Andrew interested in developing some Gigaplexes?
Yes, 100%. I've already spoken to them about it. I showed them some of the rough plans that you showed me, and that's actually why we went out to look at the duplex. It's on a flood zone, so it's not going to work out for zoning. But we do have that in mind, where we want to buy something that already has some income producing asset on there that we could then use as a site for the Gigaplex.
So you are speaking the same language as me, Brad. I'm really, really thrilled. I mean, if I had any hair, it would be standing up. Yeah, this is my ball cap, but it's also my what do they call it, toupee. So it is what it is. All kidding aside, I think the Gigaplex is truly the solution to affordable housing in a way that maybe nothing else I can think of is. And I know you've seen this, but I think so. Oh shoot. I'll share my screen again with you. So you have seen this plan before, correct?
Yeah, we went over it last call.
Right. And do you have the URL for that? It's kind of a corny homemade 13-minute video that I created myself, but do you still have that URL?
Yes, I do.
I think you should ask your partners to look at it too, because it is corny, it is homemade, but that's just me. I'm a pretty down-to-earth kind of guy, and I'm sure I could get video filmmakers to make a much better video. But I don't really care about that. I care about the quality of the idea and the presentation. It's just me. And some people, that's not good enough. I understand that. But to a lot of other people, in fact, in the hundreds of thousands of people who do follow me, they don't really care. They just like my ideas.
Yeah.
And they know I'm a kind of a homespun, down to earth guy. Even when I had a lot of money, you know, I've always felt like I was just one of the people.
Mhm.
I know that sounds corny, but that's just me. So this could be a triplex, but could also be a 20-story building.
Yep.
And the concept applies all the way up. Brad Lamb, who's a big condo builder in Toronto, I think I mentioned him to you, is very interested in gigaplexing at least 10 floors, maybe 20 floors of his next 60-story building in Toronto.
Yep.
And he says, Bruce, can you imagine if I put you know, an ad out there for condo buyers who wanted to live and work in the same place? Now, after COVID-19, there's a lot of interest.
Oh yeah.
And I've got another client in Kitchener-Waterloo who wants to build a building, a gigaplex building. And he had an absolutely brilliant idea. This is new to you because it's new to me, where he will build a gigaplex in Kitchener-Waterloo. Waterloo is a very strong tech town now.
Mhm.
You're aware of that, right?
Yep.
He will build a gigaplex, and he will not lease it to individuals. He will lease it to tech companies. And I said, he said, I'll lease a whole floor or maybe multiple floors. And so for you and Brad and Andrew, I had a new model I wanted to talk to you about today, which is, what if you were to, instead of renting them to people, you were to rent them to Shopify? Do you understand?
Oh yeah.
So let's say you had you know, a 6-story, 35-unit gigaplex, and you go to Shopify and you explain the concept to them, and you say to Shopify, I'll rent you the whole building. You could reduce the one-to-many problem to one-to-one.
Mhm.
Because Toby Lutke, you know who Toby is?
Yes.
He's one of the co-founders of Shopify. He told me that they have no problem, you know, attracting people to work for Shopify. It's a great place to work. Ottawa, Toronto, wherever. But they have a trouble holding on to them. And I said, really? How come? I mean, do you not pay them enough? He said, oh no, we pay people plenty. You know, we're a good organization to work for. There's no place for these people to live.
Mm.
And in Ottawa today, if you have a 1-bedroom apartment or a microsuite and you put it on Kijiji, you'll have 32 answers or people looking to rent it within 24 to 36 hours.
Yep.
And you know, I feel bad. You know, I'm quite a sensitive person, and I feel bad when I have you know, 30 people show up or to a showing, and I have to say no to 29. They're all nice people, mostly young people. So it's really bad. And you know, my dad was a professor. His name was Jack, Professor O.J. Firestone. And he worked for the government of Canada in the post-war Reconstruction period, the end of the 1940s and beginning of the 1950s. And he worked for C.D. Howe, who was the most famous cabinet minister maybe ever. He was an American expatriate who lived in Ottawa, and he was called the Minister of Everything. And my dad, and working for the minister, created Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation, which is now CMHC. My dad had a hand in that, and he was very proud of it. And Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation, now called Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, but Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation put tremendous work in the 1940s and 50s, the late 40s and early 50s, and throughout the 50s and 60s, to make sure we had enough affordable housing for every returning veteran from overseas, whether they served in the European theater fighting Germany there, or in the Pacific theater fighting Japan. And their goal was everybody who wants a house can have one. And if my dad were alive and the minister was alive today, he would kick your ass and my ass and Jim Watson's ass and John Tory's ass. He would kick people in Austin and Nashville, in Los Angeles and San Francisco and Portland and Seattle. He would kick them all in the derriere and say, you guys have failed. All of a sudden, somehow in 2010, 2020, we as a society forgot how to provide housing for our people.
Mm-hmm.
That is atrocious. And sorry to go on my hobby horse here, but I'm very passionate about this. So when I saw on your agenda that you and your partners are interested in the Gigaplex, I was really excited. And the new model might be, maybe you wouldn't, if you had 35 units, you wouldn't rent all 35 to Shopify, but you might rent a few floors to them, and you would solve a big problem for Shopify. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the bigger development kind of scares me at the moment, and all my experience is in tertiary markets. So I haven't yet to move into Ottawa with multifamily. So like maybe it's just my limiting beliefs, but I wanted to try this model out in a suburb or one of the markets we're comfortable with, because I look at the land values in Ottawa and I get a little nervous.
But what I wanted you to do is I want you to look for another 160 Bayswater. I do.
Okay.
And so, I mean, there's no reason why if you want to build it in a suburb, that's fine. If you want to build it downtown, that's fine too, but do it smart.
Okay.
And you don't have to build a 35 unit apartment building. You could build a triplex.
Yep.
Right? And so if you could find a 160 Bayswater where you have existing cash flow and you have a backyard facing an alley, I'm still frustrated. You could put a Gigaplex there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we're struggling with now is zoning requirements. Is there, like, outside of calling the city, and I've done that in the past, and it's a bit of a rabbit hole, but becoming an expert on zoning in Ottawa, what's your sort of
okay? So here's what I would suggest you do. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just looking to see if I got the Gigaplex Mini somewhere. I hope so. I'll find it in a minute. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look for, maybe like you said, a place where you can have some existing cash flow and there's room to expand. And if it's in Orleans or it's in Barbecue Haven or it's in Canada, or if it's 162 Bayswater, I'm okay with that. You would put in an offer and tie up the place with conditions, right? I mean, typical. You would put in an offer, and maybe financing would be a condition. Building inspection would be a condition. Those are the normal conditions. But you would put in a third condition, which is what's called a pre-consultation with the City of Ottawa.
Okay.
Do you know what a pre-consultation is? Okay.
No.
It is one of the services the city offers, which is an excellent service. For $500, if you have tied up a property, the City of Ottawa will bring into a room at City Hall. And this is after the COVID-19 is under control. Right now, you couldn't do it. Right. There's no way. But after it's under control, they will bring everybody in a room that you need for that property to discuss that property. They'll bring zoning people in there, plans inspectors in there, transportation people, all the people. It's only $500. Best $500 you'll ever spend.
Okay.
The other thing I would want you to do is I want you to put Zoom on your phone. So but I only have time to do one of these. So if you put in an offer and you tie it up, I want to walk through the property with you, but I will be in my office and you will actually be out on the site doing that. So I do this with all of my clients now. I've got clients in Long Beach, California, and Scottsdale, Arizona. There's no way I'm going to get on a plane and fly to Scottsdale to see a property.
For sure.
So they put Zoom on the phone and they walk me through a property, walk me around the outside, the inside. I can say, hey, turn to the left a little bit. What's that? I can suggest animations and changes, okay? And we record those sessions. on Zoom, just like I'm recording this one.
Yep.
It downloads to my computer, I upload it unlisted to YouTube, and I give you that. So if we're talking potential animations and plans and other cool stuff, and you have the entire building on YouTube recorded, so you can share it with your partners if they're in Europe. You could share it with your renovator, your contractor, your mortgage broker, your realtor. I mean, so once you have it recorded, and you know, when you have somebody as smart as you are, Brad, and as smart as I am on the same recording, and these are short recordings, these are not 2 hours. We're talking 10 or 15 minutes to walk through a typical property, a bigger property longer. If you have a 15-minute recording with all the animation ideas and all the possibilities, that is going to help you and your architect, your designer, your renovator, your contractor. It's a really, really important building block. I call that a property animation and analysis. Okay. They're called PAN reports, PAAN. That's just a name I gave to it. Property animation and analysis. And what's cool about it is it's part of coaching, right? You don't have to pay extra for it. It's just part of that. The other thing that I do is if you are, part of your coaching is holding you accountable. So I want you to think about stuff I've asked you to do today, and I want you to actually do it. And so I would like you to report back to me sometime in the next 2 weeks. It's called a mid-month report.
Okay.
You understand that's part of your job. And
Yep.
say, okay, Bruce, we did all kinds of things in the 2 hours we spent together, and here's what I've done since then. I followed up on this, this, and this. I worked on, you know, who's doing what, you know, on this list between you and Brad and Andrew. And this is what I've done so far. And if there's something I've asked you to consider doing and you haven't done it, I'd like to know why. Part of coaching is holding you accountable.
For sure.
I'm not your boss, but I do hold you accountable. All right. So I expect a mid-month report. Then the next thing I do is if you were talking to a lender, an appraiser, you know, even a tenant, and you need some advice from me, I can join in a Zoom call. I can drop in on meetings. Like I have dropped in on meetings with the city of Ottawa where there's a pre-consultation going on, and it takes an hour and 15 minutes to do that. But you might want me in on that meeting just for the first 15 minutes. So again, if you have me, you can actually have me on your phone or on your iPad or your Samsung tablet or whatever. And as long as you got Zoom there, I can actually be in the room and I can say to the planners and to the transportation people, you know, this is the project that Brad and his partners are looking at. This is why I think it makes sense. And sometimes it can really help you have a good meeting with the city. And they've been accepting that from an old dude like me. Right. So it means that I can help you more without having to, you know, travel half an hour downtown, park somewhere, half an hour back, you know, an hour and 15 minutes in the meeting. You know, if I had to do that, then I wouldn't be able to do it, or I'd have to charge people a lot more money.
Right. No.
Is it making any sense?
Yeah, 100%.
In terms of zoning, I don't know if I have it in here, but I did boot it up. At least I think I do. Give me 1 second. There's one last thing I want to show you before we sign off.
And I think next meeting, the top of my agenda is going to be financing. We do have money, but it's obviously limited given how many. We don't have a huge portfolio, so financing things like this is at top of mind.
Absolutely, we're going to talk about that for sure. So what you could do is you could experiment with the Gigaplex Mini if you're not 100% comfortable with doing a triplex or a fourplex. Do you know what the Gigaplex Mini is?
No.
Okay, so this is a coach house that I've designed for my backyard, which I was going to build this year, but there's no way. There's no way. I can't even talk to my contractors right now.
Yeah.
So this is what's called a Gigaplex Mini, and it is. Let me just see if okay. Here's an elevation. So this is a coach house. So one of the things you and your partners could do is you could buy a house, put in a basement apartment or a side yard apartment, and add a coach house in the backyard. That's now legal. The province of Ontario legalized it last year.
Okay.
Um,
So even on R1 zone?
even in an R1 zone.
Okay.
All right. So Ottawa legalized coach houses in 2016, but they made it, in my opinion, they made a mistake. And I helped them write the bylaw, and we had a little bit of a tussle on it. And I said to the guys, because what Ottawa did was they said you could either have a coach house or a basement apartment or side yard apartment, but not both.
Okay.
Right? And I said, that's a mistake, because what's going to happen is, I can tell you, clients of mine are going to build a coach house in their backyard, wave goodbye to the bylaw officer and the plans inspectors. And once they wave that, then they're going to put an illegal apartment in their house. Guaranteed.
Yep.
Guaranteed.
Yep.
And I said, we came out of that in 2010 when we legalized basement apartments, even in R1 zones. Okay?
Yep.
And I convinced Mayor Shirelli, when he was in his last year in office in Ottawa, before he went to Toronto to serve in cabinet there, I convinced him to legalize basement apartments. I said, Bob, we have probably 30, maybe 40,000 illegal apartments in Ottawa, and many of them are not safe. They don't meet the building code. Legalize them so we could bring them out of the gray market or the black market and deal with them properly. I bought a house, it had a side yard apartment. The realtor said, oh yeah, it's legal. Bull crap. It was not legal. And I had to go back all the way to 1956 when the house was first built. I got the plans from microfiche, if you know what that is. And they had never filed for a building permit. So we had an illegal side yard apartment. And I spent about $10,000 legalizing it. So I did new plans. I put in inline smoke detectors. I put in additional fire separation. It's now a legal apartment. So realtors sometimes do lie to people, right?
So this is the coach house and it has a basement apartment?
So I'm going to show you what it is, okay?
Okay.
So
I know we're running up against time, so.
that's all right. I'm not going to, I mean, if we go a little bit over time, it's okay. I do have somebody else coming for coaching at 1:30, I think, so I better not be, because I need a few minutes in between.
Yeah, of course.
I get too tired.
We can talk about this next meeting too.
No, but I want to just show it to you, because I'm going to send you these slides.
Okay.
So what I would like you to do, if you want to do a little experiment just to get your feet wet, as opposed to jumping in whole hog, because I don't want you to go broke, is you buy a house, you put in a basement apartment or side yard apartment and a coach house. This coach house is called the Gigaplex Mini. And you notice this is the main door here. This is the side door here. And this is the, what I call manufactured walkout condition, which makes the basement much more interesting, more air, more light, etc. So, and
Yep.
Here is just another view of it. You notice how we use zero-step entry everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
And that's because about 25% of the Ottawa rental market will be seniors by 2032, according to CMHC. 25%. And even if you're a young mom with a baby carriage, it's a hell of a nice thing to be able to just zoom in with the baby carriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're an older person with a walker or a wheelchair. Obviously, a zero-step entry is important. But now I want to just walk you through so it's exactly what you saw before. This main floor is a 2-bedroom unit.
Yep.
Living room, main entrance here, zero-step entry, kitchen, the lunch counter, because nobody seems to have use dining rooms anymore. A cheater ensuite here, and then here's that micro suite with its own little micro kitchen, its own bathroom, but it also has its own door to the outside. So you remember how it works, right?
Yep.
So you rent it to poor old Prof. Bruce. I've fallen on hard times. I rent this from you for $1,600, $1,800 a month. This nice 2-bedroom coach house in your backyard. But you give me permission, because I have my PSW say, my personal support worker, I can bring in an elder here and take care of her.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe I get $2,500 a month for that. You as the landlord get a percentage of that, say 20%. So now if you're renting to me for $1,800, you're now at $2,300.
Mm-hmm.
And my cost is I have to pay you $1,800. I get $2,500 in revenue. I give you an extra $500. So my cost to rent this is now negative $200 a month.
Yep.
So with this in mind, this Gigaplex idea in mind, I think we're going to see 5 and 10-year residential leases.
Yeah. Makes sense.
If I can live for a negative $200 a month, I am not fucking moving. Okay. You know, and you got to remember that the average Canada pension plan payout for people my age is $555 a month. That is not enough to live on. So if I could find a place that I could live in for no money or negative money, I'm staying. And one of the keys to your profitability as a landlord is committed monthly recurring revenues, but also reducing tenant churn.
Mm-hmm.
Every time a tenant moves out, you've got to make ready that unit. You've got to repair it. You've got to clean it. You've got to paint it. You might lose a month of rent. And if you're changing over tenants every year, your portfolio will not be profitable. This is the basement. All right. So in the basement, this is the one I designed for my house. In the basement, I'm going to have 3 coaching offices and a reception room. I probably won't have a reception. I'll probably have a boardroom. So I'll have a boardroom and 3 offices for my coaching practice. But this could easily be another apartment.
Yep.
All right. So the coach house, you might get, say, $2,000, $2,200 for the upstairs, including the percentage rent. And then you could do the same thing downstairs if you wanted to.
Yep.
And you notice that we designed the lower level so it has 2 ingresses and egresses. So you could do exactly the same thing with what's called augmented tenancies with this design.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this Gigaplex Mini, we think will generate between $3,000 and $4,000 a month in your backyard.
Yeah, that's pretty substantial.
That's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
And one more thing I'm going to send you is I want to show you some of the micro suites that the University of British Columbia has been building.
Okay.
Like the smallest micro suite that we've done so far is about 275 square feet. And then I had another client of mine, and I'll send you that as well, do something called the Spy Loft, which was 225 square feet. I said, well, that's probably as small as we can get.
Yeah.
UBC has done these unbelievably imaginative branded micro suites. They call them nano micro suites, 140 square feet.
Oh my.
So I'll send you all of this, Brad. It's 104. Okay. Was this helpful?
Extremely helpful, Bruce. I've got my notes. I've got my to-do list, and can't wait till our next call.
In the next 6 months, brother, we're going to blow up everything in a good way. All right. So stay tuned. I will make sure that you get the recording and you get a bunch of other stuff.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Bruce.
All the best.
Talk soon. Bye.